So our website there, if you go into the local gov, they're all in there. You'll see the National Building Control and Market Surveillance, and it takes you to the National Building Control website there, where you can submit your commencement notices, applications, fire cert stacks, relaxations and dispensations. So submitting a commencement notice, and these are the general requirements of the drawings that as a minimum that you have to show to get a commencement notice. But SI 9 of 2014 formal commencement notice. Such plans, calculations, specifications and particulars as necessary to outline the proposed works or building will comply with the requirements of the second schedule of building relevant to the works concerned and included in. And you're supposed to put in a schedule of the such plans, calculations, specifications and particulars that are designed and to be prepared at a later date. And this is what people assigned certifiers are not doing when they're actually doing their completion certs, is there should be anything that's not as part of the commencement notice that it was designed at a later stage should be uploaded to show that the design has been completed on the CCC. So part 2, commencement notices before construction and the application of part 2, obligation to give notice. It's not the building control's authority to say that you need notices. You as the designer, the owner and the builder have a statutory requirement to give that notice and the correct notice type you're submitting, and whether you need an application fire cert, that they all need to be put in. There's procedures, there's the notices, applications, certificates, declarations, and code of practices and how they all go together. So fire safety certificates under Article 20A, you have revised fire safety certificates, regularization certificates, disability access to revised disability access to dispensations and relaxations from parts or parts thereof the regulations. So if you want to submit a fire cert application, you go into My Applications if you're working on an existing application or you create a new application. And you'll also see that we have our Christmas closure periods up there on the website, so people can refer to them for the latest date that they can put in an application for a CCC or a commencement notice. And when you're uploading documents, you know, your compliance report, your site plans, elevations, your floor area fee calculations, that can be part of your floor plan, but it needs to be detailed and showing how the calculation is done correctly. And just if you're using PDF editors, you can zip your files down and that will increase your upload speed if you're in a low connectivity area with your Wi-Fi. So that can speed up your process just by zipping big files down. So this is how the Building Control Acts, the Local Government Act and the Building Control Regulations, the Building Regulations, Technical Guidance Documents, Code of Practice, the 31 Building Control Authorities, how they all fit together. And then you have the European Construction Product Regulations, the Market Surveillance, Guidance for Market Surveillance, and the EU Performance of Energy Buildings. So there's 25 sections, 2 schedules, and you should all be familiar with this if you're building houses or building anything. So the Building Control Act and how they go together as well. The Code of Practice for Inspecting and Certifying Buildings and Works. Your Part 2 commencement notices. Part 3 is fire cert. Part 3A is a 7-day notice revised fire cert regularization cert. Part 3B is the disability access cert. And the Part 3C is the certificate of compliance and completion. Part 4 is the register, and you can look up the register on the front of the BCMS. If you have your commencement notice, you'll actually find your building to see was it validated or had you a valid commencement notice. So compliance with work, design, construction. And remember, everything is for health, safety and welfare and conservation of building and access for all. So that's what the building regulations try to achieve. So fire stopping, let's move on to a few of these. Fire stopping, which of the following is the definition of fire stopping? The expensive red group that we see when we walk into sites. A seal provided to a close of imperfection or fit of design or tolerance between elements or components to restrict or prevent the passage of fire and smoke. And then there's another one there, a seal provided to close an imperfection of fit or design tolerance between elements or components to restrict or prevent the passage of fire and smoke. Fire stopping shall not be made of combustible material or a huge pain in the neck. And the last one seems to be a lot of the problems out there. But if there are two definitions, A, B, and C, one is in part B, and the other one comes from the IS 440. Timber frame manual. So fire stopping, so the designer must be a competent person. He must plan, review, and must plan where he's putting in, what he's going to do, what products he's going to use, are they compliant, are they going to be fit for purpose. The installer, he must be a competent person too. The person who's inspected it must be a competent person to show that it's done. Maintenance must be carried out by a competent person also. And then you get your certificate at the end, your ancillary certificate. So the competent person is deemed to be a competent person where, having regard to the task he or she is required to perform and taking into account the size and complexity of the building or works, the person possesses sufficient training, experience, and knowledge appropriate to the nature of the works being undertaken. That's a very big, broad statement for everyone to be fully competent in all the building regulations. And if you're designing and using additional or new guidance or BS 999, you equally have to be competent there in your design to implement your fire safety. And the designer has a meaning under the Act as well. So the inspection notification framework is in the Code of Practice. And this is where, for Part B compliance, that fire stopping and elements like that have to be notified to the assigned certifier, the builder, that someone is actually carrying out and doing the inspections and recording what's been done on site. And then your inspection plan is something that the assigned certifier is the nominated person to, and he agrees all the inspections with all the other people in the design team. So the assessment and inspections, so look, building control authorities have to inspect 12 to 15% of new buildings for a valid commencement notice has been received in the year. How they selected the inspections depends on a lot of risk assessments, and Martin went through that, and it can be based on a technical desktop assessment, or they may actually go out to site as well and carry out a site inspection. So the fire stopping requirements, they are for Technical Guidance Document B, Volume 2. So any hole or penetration with 40 mil, and keep them as small as possible and as few as possible, and that will reduce your costs. Part C 2020 reprint has slightly different guidance. So that's for buildings other than dwellings, houses. And the guidance is there as well. So fire stopping materials, there's guidance there given on cement, gypsum, plasterboard, glass fiber, mineral wool, crushed rock, and these are all in the intermastics, but they all have to be suitable for their intended use. And you may need fire testing and that to prove compliance. And these are pictures in dwelling houses where the plumber has put all his pipes up. And these are in utility rooms, one of the highest risk rooms in your house. And if these are metal web joists, that fire is going to spread through it. Undesigned fire, you know, you're not going to get your 30 minutes. Load bearing, if there's a sealant, there were 2-story houses. So by providing that and keeping the pipes as small as possible, even like this here, and keeping a good space between them, that would have been easy fire stopped without the need for expensive collars and that. But this one here now, you know, that might require a redesign on how to comply. So ancillary certs and people that design them, and the design certifier has the role of coordinating all the ancillary design certs. So if someone's designing one element of the books and that, the design certifier needs to actually have that on the certificate of what he's actually carrying out. So the design certifier signs a design certificate that is lodged with the commencement notice and ensures that any necessary ancillary certificates from members of the design team are scheduled and logged as necessary appropriate. So the person, the designer, the design certifier here mightn't have did the fire cert application, but he might want an ancillary design cert from that. He mightn't have did the DAC, and he might want an ancillary design cert for that as well. The builder undertaking to coordinate the works of specialist contractors and designers should ensure that ancillary certs of compliance are provided, and then the design certifier undertakes to certify and completion, coordinate in accordance with the inspection plan, individual certifiers and design team who provide the necessary ancillary certs. So it's basically collect up all the paperwork and the design drawings with it. The paperwork, the ancillary design cert, is no good unless you get their design with it. So your ancillary certs, SI 9 of 2014, the Brendan regulations. So you have the code of practice, the practice note 1 and 2, and the ancillary certs 2017, and the framework for building control authorities. All very useful documents, all there that you can get. The links is actually on them where you can click them, and you should be able to download them for ease. Part B of the building regulations is probably affects every building other building regulation. You have to have good quality materials to build anything. They have to be fit for purpose. So it defines what is meant by proper materials for use in works, in assessing the fitness of use and conditions of use of that material, product. Consideration should be given to durability, safety, local climate conditions, e.g. wind-driven rain, humidity, etc., and other such issues. While the primary route for establishing the fitness of material for its intended use is through recognized standardized procedures referred to in the paragraph A, B, or C of the requirement D3, other methods may be considered in establishing fitness, and they're included there. You can also see the argument certs and key details. You can see the fire stopping detail here. So it's important to read these and understand what's in them. And also may form part of your inspection notification framework, that work has actually been carried out and completed. Tests and calculations carried out by accredited laboratories to show that the material is capable of performing the function for which it is intended. So this is your fire tests that are in the supplementary guidance. You don't need the fire test, but they have been carried out to show performance. The performance in use, the party wall detail that's been in the approved document, Part B, since 1981. I don't know if it was ever tested, but it works. So internal fire, B7 linings, and internal fire structure. The supplementary guidance So fire resistance there is often confused between fire resistance and the reaction of fire. Fire resistance is the measure of the ability of a material or system to resist and ideally prevent the passage of fire from one distinct area to another. Reaction to fire is the measure of how a material or system will contribute to the fire development and fire spread. So you can see here the table A1 and the floor and the requirements for the fire resistance. Just go back there. And you can see there that floors in a two-story house is a modified half hour, but no tests carried out to a modified half hour. So we have to go with full 30 minutes. Unless someone carries out a test at 40 or 50 grand for a modified floor, it doesn't exist. Also, the details here. It's important that you actually familiarize, even from building control, when you're actually out and you know the difference in details when you're out inspecting, and you're able to pull out the guidance document and show the builder on site. That's the detail that he needs to do, or he gets a fire test. So the supplementary guidance, they were actually issued, the details were actually issued through the BCMS when they were first done, before the guidance was actually issued. And this was a timber frame party wall, already been lifted on site, and they forgot to put in the OSB board either side and the mineral wall in it. You can see it here. Had to be mineral walled and sheeted. Couldn't be done on site, had to go back to the factory. Whole day wasted because they didn't implement the right thing. Remember when they're going on site, who's checking to see that that's completed? The metal frame here, where there's assembly here, there's a ceiling is down here, there's a secondary non-load bearing element here, and then the load bearing above it for the fire assembly. And they were looking for services of that, and they butchered it. But who's ensuring that that goes back correctly to ensure that the performance is there? Glass panels in a protected corridor have the right 30 minutes or 60 minutes. And a wall that required a half-hour construction of fire resistance, and they cross-battened it, but there's no test for that. But if they had to read the guidance in EN 1365, all they had to do was take off the battens and actually extend out the wall with the verti thing, and they could comply by deepening the studs. So the plaster substitution, we mentioned that earlier, that you're looking for any plaster that has the classification under EN 520. You can substitute the boards. Doesn't matter who the manufacturer is. Knuff, Rock, Gyprock, that. So also the fixing details and all that, important to understand the screw thicknesses and all that, and the types of boards. The F is usually pink and the A is usually white type of color. And you get a blue and you get a green. But as long as they're to EN 520 and they have the required thicknesses here, they're okay. Fire stopping. The electrical board, sometimes they're in protected corridors. Not really a good place to put them in. And especially if you're not going to fire stop them up here. You are introducing a risk into a wall that's not designed for. As a designer, you have to take that precaution to limit that fire spread into that ceiling. This is a better detail here, but they need to come back and use a mastic seal here. That's actually compliant with the cables as well. That won't heat up and actually burn or cause a greater issue. And ventilation systems, you're putting them in sealants. Have they got fire tests? Are they tested in the same assembly as you're using? You know? We checked here, some of them have a wee red pad in it. When the fire happens, that will expand and fill that void. But who's checking to see, is it actually been the ventilator guy that's validating it? So designers and sign certifiers and inspectors need to check that that is being done. Checking for the fire test, the downlighters as well. Are they approved for the floor that you're putting them in or ceiling? Also, if these products have been tested in a similar construction, you need to get the copy of that fire test. Compare it with the supplementary guidance. And if there's a slight variation, you may have to go back and implement this rather than the other fire test that you had previously looked at. These are like the fire stopping issues on the separating walls. You know, the details is there, making sure that the rock wall is actually between the slates. It's actually in here along this. You can see here that that 50 mil gap varied and actually went above the roof track. Probably wasn't lined up right, and the wall was probably built before the roof trusses come on. So someone has to come back and actually cut that wall. In here, it's not fire stopped out to the external wall. And this is the flat roof. So you're making sure that there's between two houses here, that upstand is 375 mil minimum. Cavity barriers, you know, this is timber frame separating wall in the cavity here, not blocked off. You're hoping that that rock wall is continued on down there. It was a pillar, but it needed to be closed off there as well to make sure that if they'd run the head between the two, probably would have been sufficient. Go back. Cavity barriers in timber frame, 65 mil. What you can see here, they moved it too close to the edge. They're not getting the compression on the bag. So the bag is not effective. It's a 65 mil bag. The cavity should be 15 mil or 50 mil, and the bag should be under compression by 15 mil as per the manufacturer's instructions. And that's why it's important to have the manufacturer's instructions. And these are the requirements for the provision of cavity barriers in volume 2. At the top of an external wall, masonry or frame construction, including any gable wall, vertical at the junction of a separating wall, and any such wall within an external cavity wall, see the diagram 12, above an enclosure to a protected stairwell, diagram 11, and around all openings, windows, doors, vents, service boxes, etc. in frame construction. Timber frame guy here that had no rock wall, and he tried to put in cavity barriers on the separating wall. And if you go to volume 2, it should be noted that cavity barriers should not be provided above separating walls, as these walls are required to be carried up full story height to the roof. And then the fire resistance standards for a cavity barrier are lower than for a separating wall, and it is important to use a separating wall in the situation to maintain the standard of fire resistance. It's all in the guidance document. Don't have to look anywhere else. A valley here on the separating wall, it's not an approved detail in the technical guidance documents. But there is guidance there that says that you must build that up tight underneath it. And you'd have to make sure that the risk of fire from one building to another is maintained in that roof space. Also ensure your rock wall is in here on your separating walls. Windows, doors, and escapes rescues. Bedroom windows with the keys in it. You know, the instructors shouldn't be more than 100 mil opening. You know, in the bedrooms and your front door, the thumb turns. So you should be looking if this was in a bedroom here and they needed a thumb turn on the door. So the building regulations, technical guidance documents, and supplementary guidance are all prima facie compliance with the building regulations. So you've codes of practice, standard recommendation, acceptable construction details, Irish standards, argument certs, alternative national technical specifications, equivalent level of fire safety and stability. So these are all recommended guidance documents that's on the department website. You'll see that the guidance here on the marketing of and use of aggregate blocks to EN 771-3. Supplementary guidance, the limiting thermal bridging ACDs, the ventilation, and then the guidance on the parts M, K, and B. And make sure BBA certs that they're Irish or Irish building regulations. Prescribe forms and understand what you're signing. Warning, it's an offence for a person knowingly or recklessly making a statutory declaration that's false or misleading in a material respect. And it's enforceable under the Building Control Act. So that's my presentation.